girl rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots, and a sexy body full of tats.
Yeah, because we're a Samsung house, so Apples aren't going to do us any good. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that's the weird thing here. It's like I don't need an Apple Watch. I keep getting like people asking me about getting one or reasons to get one. It's like, dude, I have a MacBook. That's it. Everything else. Well, Sarah has an iPhone, but she only got the iPhone because it was like the cheapest option when she was getting a smartphone,
hmm
and like we have nothing but Samsung like things in our home.
yeah, Samsung is just superior in my opinion. But that's it is what it is. We got to be different from Bobby somehow, right? Green bubbles for life, right? Hey, green green bubble mafia.
He texted me earlier. Um, he texted me earlier today because they're going to record Nerd Rage on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked him a couple days ago, like, "Hey, what day are you recording next week?" He was like, "We don't know yet." And I was like, "Well, look, I'm available Monday if you need,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm off." And he was like, "Okay, I'll
That's
let you
weird.
know tomorrow." So I got a text from him. Just let me know, hey, we'll record Monday at 2. Is that good? I was like, that works for me. I can make it happen. And when I sent it, he replied back to me, and I was like, should I reply back just to kind of like fuck with him some more, just because I know how much he hates it. It's like, oh,
Oh yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
got a fucking Android. So
Yeah.
it's like that's
It's
the only reason I text him, just so he has to see the green bubble.
it feels. Oh, I mean, same
It's
thing.
like,
Now that I know it bothers him, I kind of want to do it more. Yeah, it's like I love
yeah,
Bobby, but
like I don't text for any reason.
All right, so might as well do intro to the show because we just talk off the beginning. So, guys, welcome back to the Now You Made It Awkward podcast. Technically, episode 57, but this may just end up being a bonus because this is kind of a sequel to an episode of Off the Mats that will be dropping sometime soon from my friend Dante over here.
Oh, hey,
Yeah,
I was like, that's my cue.
that's your cue. Literally, I queued you up. It was great. Um, but welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's weird being on the other end. Like I'm so used to like fucking with things on my side and like, okay, I'm gonna introduce the show. Now I'm a guest, and I'm like, oh
Yeah, you now don't know what to
wow,
do with your hands.
that's what it's like.
Yeah, I'm watching you fidget. I'm like,
Yeah,
you literally have no idea what to do with your hands. It's fine. Um,
no,
but
I
but
don't.
I'm sitting here tweaking the screen because it's annoying me, but I don't care. The patrons are going to see it. Hello, patrons. Thank you for your patronage. They will get the full uncut thing over there. But do you have a release date for the episode we did last week? Did you finish editing it?
What's today?
Today is Thursday still.
No, not yet. Actually, so it's not this Monday. It's the following Monday after this one.
Okay. So
So what
so
date is that?
this will be the
Let me look at.
teaser for that episode because this will come out next week. So um,
So
I
the
don't know dates anymore.
24 or 26.
Okay, so there you go, guys. So if you're watching or you're listening to this episode, the episode that we recorded for one of his podcasts, will be dropping on that day. So you do have Off the Mats, and then you have So You Like Horror, and then also my favorite new show, Columpton Beer Club.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed. I let Steve know. I was like, "Hey, we're getting some love out in Texas now, son."
Yep.
He's like, "All right, cool."
Yep,
He's like,
I
"That's all
did
you
hear
have to
that.
say."
I did hear that, and then I played it back again because I just want to hear more about me. Um, it's more about me. It's fine. I love that. And we talked. Well, it was like 3 hours almost last week. It was crazy. Hopefully, we don't do that
Yeah.
tonight. But it is what it is. But if
Well,
you want to give a little background on you, just so people have a little.
all right. Yeah. So, yeah, it's always a weird question because I never really fucking know which to tell people. It's like, so I was born in Detroit, Michigan in 1978. Um,
That,
nah,
and that's it.
I
That's all we
do.
need to know. We're good.
Um, so as it was mentioned, I host the Off the Mats podcast, which is supposed to be a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu podcast, but honestly, it's whatever the fuck I want it to be. I, I typically have grapplers on as guests, but also I just like to talk to people, so it's whatever. Uh, And then that's basically because I do practice Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I love horror movies, so that's why we did the horror podcast. And Colompton is really a beer review show, but it's not really. It's just
It's
two
a beer
friends just
drinking
talking
show.
shit.
As as I
Yeah,
think I put it
that's
when we met at Skullstice. So that's our minor background there. We met at the yearly party for from Bobby's Skullstice, which the
yeah,
patrons would have
yeah.
seen a little bit
And,
of.
and
Sorry, I've got too much
that's
shit.
the thing too.
I don't know where to put anything. I've got too much stuff on my desk. Ah,
But no, that's why it's good when I record upstairs in my room because I don't have an option. I only can have the laptop and the mic. And downstairs, I have the table, and it's like I have like a dry erase board, like other microphones, all this bullshit, action figures,
yeah.
like a sword, like fucking edibles that I'm just like teasing Steve with, like, dude, we should take these. Or Marilyn Phil, even like anytime Marilyn Phil comes over to record, I'll pull out the edibles. Like,
Oh
come on,
no.
dude, just have one with me. I want to see you cut loose. He's like, no,
Oh
no, because I
no.
might get tested at work. I was like, no, you won't. He's like, I will.
That
I might get
day,
tested too.
that day, you know. See, luckily for my job, they only test when you've had an accident or injury. So my luck, it would be the worst thing to happen to me. That's just enough to have me go to get tested, you know. But I know that at least CBD products they exclude, but not the harder stuff. So it
So
is what it
I
is.
don't know what the rules are at my job.
I might want to ask.
Like, I'm not sure if, like, because I know when I got hired on, they were excited. They're like, look, can you start on this date? And I was like, well, I want to give a proper 2 week notice for my job, but also let's not hire me before the background check and the drug screening, just in
Yeah,
case. I don't know. The world is goofy, you
yeah.
know.
Because you
And
told the story how Steve was one of your references, and they called him, but you were basically going in for orientation the day they called him, or the next
yeah,
day. It was like, yeah, they're
yeah. I
doing
was
great
actually
on
at
that.
orientation.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So wait,
Yeah.
how long have you
Well,
been?
I think at, um, I started May 1st.
Oh, okay. So that lets me know a little either how far behind I was starting Columpton, because it's like when I started it, you were about to go to the new job, and then I was playing a little bit of catch up, and now I
Mm.
jumped ahead to the current episode. So it's weird when you're getting to know somebody by proxy a little bit. Same thing with like when you guest on Nerd Rage, which is where I first learned of you at all. Actually, and you never know when the episode might drop. It might be 2 weeks from now. You have no idea when in the recording schedule.
Yeah.
And when we number these episodes when we record them, so it's like, okay, we kind of get stuck that way. But I'm never like, I don't have banked episodes, so like usually if there's a delay, it's because we screwed up, and it's still real time, so to speak. um
Yeah. Off the mats, I have like episodes kind of like Phil came over and recorded the newest episode of So You Like Horror. And while he was here, he was like, look, let's just do a bonus off the mats episode and just have it, kind of stashed away in case I run into another incident where I'm short.
mhm.
And um like usually that one I can do that with. Even So You Like Horror, I can get away with it. Colompton, it is a weekly show where we sit down and we just talk about whatever's going on for the week.
Yeah,
But it's still a little like there's no reference. Like, we could be, I couldn't tell you what episode was what,
yeah,
other
exactly.
than like I think episode 2 was called losing our religion, because we talked really heavily about our lack thereof of religion in our lives, and what it was like for us growing up, and just kind of shitting on Christianity and every Scientology,
That's
just
great.
all of it, just like fuck all of it is stupid. And that's the only episode I could tell you that's where that's at. Anything else, I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, just listen.
like I go by the titles usually, because either if it's not a completely like off the wall title, it's going to be something that's referenced in the episodes. So like, episode numbers only matter like a week or two back. After that, who cares? That's why I always have the whatever crazy
Yeah.
titles. Like whenever Ricky went up to do Nerd Rage 400, and then he came back, we recorded right after he came back. So the episode's called "You Got Those Nerd Rage Juices on You." So that way we know. So that kind of stuff, but also nobody else gives a shit about that other than me, right? None of the other cast members are in on that. But I was just making sure I don't have any comments or anything to read before we get rolling. Usually do that, and I will of course give shout out to my co-hosts who aren't here. So Ricky, who does work for Nerd Rage Radio on the Facebook, making their promos. Wait, do you do the Facebook? Or did you? I was trying to remember.
Once in a while.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I think our first interactions technically were on the Nerd Rage Facebooks, over the years, and then I found out it was you. I was like, that's even funnier because we've technically been nerding out back and forth a little bit on Facebook through Nerd Rage, and then I do it with Phil on Twitter, which is actually funny.
So yeah, Phil, anything that Phil posts to Twitter, it usually goes in the Nerd Rage notes on Facebook.
Yes.
And those notes are what I will share to the Facebook when I remember that there's still a Facebook. I always forget. And I'm like, oh shit, I haven't posted on that in like 2 months.
Whoops. It is what it is, though. But because I was just thinking about that. But also, Ricky does the Realm Hatton Project on Friday nights on the Realm of Collectors YouTube channel. So that's twice I fucked that up. That's what happens when we don't record for 2 weeks. I can't get my spiel correct. And then, of course, you can follow me at all the Shoky-related things in the description down below. And, of course, I will link all of Dante's things as well for this episode. Because I definitely suggest go over there and at least check out one of the shows. I have not gotten to So You Like Horror just yet. Because I'm like, there's episodes I want to listen to, especially like the Decades episodes. Those are the ones I'm really interested in. So those are the ones I'm like, but like Colompton is kind of my go-to. Off the mats, I'll scroll and be like, if the title interests me, I'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna do that, because that's what. And plus, like with the jiu-jitsu stuff, it's interesting because it's something that's so foreign to me. So to hear, yourself, and if you have another guest who's another grappler, really talking about it, nerding out about it. I talked to Alan about this yesterday. That when you're in your gym, you're training with other people, like you're both BJJ nerds, but also you might be nerds for other stuff. You might be into other things, much like the collecting, the comic books, movies, whatever, something like that. So like sometimes you're there to wrestle with somebody, but you might build up a relationship with your other hobbies that you've discovered together, and that's a great way to build community. And it's something I'm sorely lacking in my life at the moment. So I've got to find something other than beer drinking to find more community. I mean, it's an expensive habit. That's why. Well, I guess jiu-jitsu is probably
most are.
Yeah, hat collecting as well. I just got this new hat in, so like I have, for everybody who knows, I'm addicted to buying these stupid, actually, nicely done hats. Actually, I do have a video coming out for that. I actually filmed a video where I bought the proper branded hat hangers and put them up where I could have my hats out of the way so the wife will stop yelling at me. Because like instead of shoes, I collect these hats. And this is their new Independence line for July 4th. So this is their Stealth America one. It's got the stripes under the bill and stuff like that. But they actually got one that's like red, white, and blue. It looks pretty cool. And then they got one that's more like navy colors. So, it's interesting. But I'm a dork, so it is what it is.
We all are.
Yeah, because I just talked with Alan about all the crap I got in. I don't want to go over all that. I want to kind of keep a little bit more focused with you because we kind of have a very specific topic to go through tonight with time travel stuff. And did you get through both movies that you said you were going to watch?
No, I thought about it as I was starting to plug everything up. I was like, shit, I didn't watch Primer.
Okay, so I did watch both. So I watched Primer and Time Lapse today.
Okay, you found it. Good.
Well, yeah. So yeah, no, I signed up for Tubi, and I was like, oh, there it is. And the fact that Time lapse has Danielle Panabaker in it was a selling point for me. You know, she's like one of my, you know, either way. So it's like, what can I say? I like the skinnier brunettes with brown eyes. You know, all day long. So that's not an insult to thicker ladies, but just for her, it works out really well. Even though she was more blonde in this movie. But the other thing I did want to mention, I didn't know until the wifey came home. There's a new season of Black Mirror on Netflix, and we watched the.
Oh, it started.
It started. The first episode fucked my brain up. Like,
Fuck.
dude, like, watch it when you get a chance, because
I can't watch it without Sarah.
Same thing.
We'll burn the bed.
Yeah. But like the first episode, because you know how they do, they drop it all at once, but then the old series is not in order. Like it makes so like you'll start at 5, and we watched started at the top, and we watched halfway through season 5, and then realized we were at the tail end, and then went back and we started watching it from season 1 in reverse order, which is difficult to do in the way they have it laid out, and you can't go boop boop and flip the shit. Especially considering there's like a loose connection through a lot of it, and then in season 5 they make like hard connections between their earlier seasons and season 5. There's like in like one episode, I think there's references to all 5 seasons in one episode. So, but this first episode of season 6, like we didn't do like Bandersnatch, we didn't do that one, and I think there was one other spinoff they had, and we didn't do that either. But we just the normal episodes. This first one, what was it called? I just watched the fucking thing. You know, I think I'd remember it right off the bat. It's not.
Hold on, it's right here in my face because I just turned on
Joan.
Netflix.
It's hold on, Black Mirror. I just watched the fucking thing. It's something about Joan. Joan is awful. Okay, so here's the thing.
Oh, I don't even need to see that because now now I want to watch it.
I know.
And
So
I can't.
I think what they're gonna do with this. So they're not to go too in deep. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but it's normally for anybody who has not seen Black Mirror. It is very much, you know, it literally turns a mirror on humanity with parables of the dangers of technology. You know, basically. And this one, I believe that our friend Joe would definitely be on board for, because like with his Prophet of the Faceless idea, it delves into that concept a bit with this episode. And the twist was interesting. Like there's always some kind of twist, right? There's always some like extra fuck you in there. And I was like,
yep.
Yeah. So considering like the time travel or time manipulation movies I'd already watched this week that already kind of fucked with my brain, I watched that before coming here to talk to you. I'm like, my brain is mush right now. I was like, I don't even know if I can comprehend everything I just saw. So we had very interesting conversations on your show, and then texting back and forth, but apparently we're both time travel nerds. So that's kind of the primer for this episode. To it. I went there. I fucking went there. So time travel's fucking complicated in movies and TV shows.
Well, go ahead.
No, you go first.
I think like you're piggybacking off what you just said there, it's difficult in movies, in media, period. I think a big part of the difficulty that they experience in media is that there's no universal ideal on how to really address time travel. Yeah. Everyone wants to they want to do it where it's super convenient to their story, such as Back to the Future or Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
You know, those specific ones, as much as we all love Back to the Future, it's not a very good time travel movie, but it's a fun movie.
Yeah. Well, like, yeah, it's. See, the funny thing is, it depends on your position on how time travel is handled, and the funny thing is, comparing, say, Back to the Future, which was kind of simplified, but then they actually really started getting a little fucky with the idea of paradoxes and what happens when you screw up your own future. Primer tries to do its best to not replicate that. I think they even kind of talk about it in the movie, but then by the end of Primer, they are doing that. They are doing the Back to the Future problem exactly in there, which is interesting, but without the caveat of you erasing your own self. But you're also talking the difference of traveling 55, 30, 50, or 100 years versus 4 days. So that's a big deal. Like, but in regards to Endgame, the idea that basically that was just the multiverse theory or multiple timeline theory expressed. If you go back and you change something, it creates a new branch timeline. And then in their case, it was mostly when you steal the stones, you create a branch timeline. And then that has to be fixed or the universe falls the fuck apart, which we'd never see it fall apart. But I like how Loki kind of cleaned that up a little bit with their explanation of how time travel's handled, how the timelines work, how the time war happened. Not Doctor Who time war, because Doctor Who's version of time travel is ridiculous. We can get into that a little bit more, but the way that Loki kind of simplified it, but also made it more complicated by the end was interesting. How every decision creates another timeline. Everything branches off from every little, tiny decision. They covered that again in not Multiverse of Madness, the other one, Quantumania. We dealt with the same thing because, of course, we're dealing with Kang. So the idea that, even in the probability engine, basically, where every little decision Ant-Man was trying to make along the way resulted in another him splitting off. Until they all came to the same conclusion of what they needed to do, and then they all kind of focused in the same direction, which is, that's when you start playing with reality in regards to time travel. But I think that if you're traveling back in time, that's where you're always going to have issues. If you're traveling forward in time, it seems to be the easiest. Clearly, you're just skipping over events. If we're going all the way back to The Time Machine, he's literally just traveling forward through time, the whole time, and no pun intended. So very easy, very very simple way to go about it. Oops, we just skipped 1,000 years. Let's see what humanity's like now, and then wait, we have subhuman creatures, and then the other ones, and the moon's exploded. What the hell has happened here? That kind of shit. And then whatever technically happens at the end of that movie, because it gets a little weird. Yeah, but I like. So let me ask you this in regards to it. Mm-hmm. Do you prefer the more grounded approach to time travel in regards to doing the thing, or like the more fantastical?
I prefer now, as I've grown up, and because I think about the shit all the time, like all the time, because I don't have enough other shit to think about. But I prefer more grounded, like, ideals to it, just because there is the ideal of, like, okay, if you go back and you change something, like Back to the Future gave you the simplified answer, well, everything's going to, mostly everything's going to be the same except for, the thing that you changed. Oh, like, your dad's cool now,
Mm-hmm.
And
your family's
that,
rich.
Yeah. Versus, if this were more grounded, he goes back, he gets hit by the car instead of his mom, it unravels every fucking thing.
Yeah.
And they, when they did Back to the Future 2, they did it kind of went a little bit more into that. It still wasn't perfect, but they did touch a little further into that, because when he went back to his home that he thought was his home, there was a black family living there. And that's more in that pocket, because it's like, okay, there's going to be some big changes, and your home isn't probably going to be this home. It's going to be someone else's home. And they were moving in the right direction, and then they made the third one. So,
well, the third one just didn't show the consequences of it. The second one showed consequences of traveling through time and making changes in the past. But of course, that was because old Biff went back to young Biff, gave him the almanac, and then whenever they tried to return to 1985, they didn't know that it had already been changed because 2015 hadn't even been changed, with the exception of the deleted scene of old Biff fading out of existence because he now negated his own existence, which that is the one complicated, like extremely complicated problem with the Back to the Future movies, is that most of their actions should remove them from the timeline.
Correct.
So, but I've always thought that basically if you spend enough time with the DeLorean, you're kind of more immune to the effects of time travel, because Doc never suffers any ill effects, like ever. And he was the one who developed it, and he spent the most time traveling with it, even if he did stuff off screen that we never saw, like his first trip to 2015, however long he was doing that, and then of course he ends up going elsewhere. But he never suffers any consequences other than the fact, like, at one point he loses his fortune and like he gets committed, but he's not committed. But also the fact that the biggest issue is that this comes into what happens in Primer when you go back in time and then you move forward through time. Now, at some point, there's going to be multiples of you in the same place because it's the same timeline that you're just moving around in, even if there's consequences. So at the end of Back to the Future 1, Marty comes back from 1955 a little bit early so that he can go and try to save Doc, and he watches this version of Marty go through all the stuff with the Libyans and then escape and go back in time to 1955. But they've already altered this timeline, so it's not even the same timeline. Not just that he, had a different effect on his parents, but the fact that Twin Pines Mall is now Lone Pine Mall. That's one of those little details. And, but the fact that now we have a thing that I'm guessing in a way, even though you'll have duplicates depending on when you come in and out, because we see that in Back to the Future 2, of course, when there's Marty on stage and Marty crawling overhead, which apparently had to always happen, which is the complicated part. So fucking causal loops are a pain in the ass when it comes to these things.
Yes. So that's one of the things I think about too when you say basically Marty's there and Marty's also on stage, and ultimately that's something that would have to have always happened. And that kind of takes you to Lost.
Yes.
When they start fucking around with time travel there, because and they even kind of pointed out, as the hatch is being made, they're like, oh, they're making our hatch. And then it's like, okay, well, Jack's like, oh, we got to blow, we got to blow up the hatch. We can't let the hatch be made.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they were kind of probably the reason why that shit happened anyway. They like all of it. They're the cause, and it just gets so goofy when it comes to looping and going in the past. There was something I had seen, I want to say maybe 2 to 3 years ago, somewhere recently, and this is all just bullshit, people talking. But a theory of time travel is like a road, but it's a one-way road. You can't go back in time, because I guess what they're saying is, and it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense. They're saying basically that path has been made, so you can't go there. And it sounds goofy because, well, it has been made because we lived it. But what they're saying is it's a path that you can't touch anymore because it's already done.
Yeah.
But you can travel forward
because there's potential.
And
it's a different.
Correct.
It's a difference. Like, even if you think about it in the idea of expended energy, to go back would mean to bring back that energy that's already been expended into the universe in one way or another. So to move forward, fine, because everything still hasn't happened. That energy hasn't been used. Those things haven't been made. To go backwards would kind of fuck with the laws of those types of physics, which is why they usually say the speed of light is basically like the temporal barrier. Nothing should be able to go past the speed of light, because in theory, with relativity, you would be traveling backwards, or aging backwards, or perceiving time backwards, which is, how some more sci-fi type movies do, with space travel and stuff like that. Like, whoops, we went too fast and we actually went back in time. But Lightyear played around with that kind of stuff. which people forget. Lightyear is a time travel movie, both forward and backwards. In reference, talk about going back in time and fucking with your past self. That was an interesting one in that one, but also changing the past, which was a whole part of it. And like, it always looked at it like it's one thing when you accidentally go back in time, right? You find yourself back in time. Like what is that? What is that James Franco show? The one with the Kennedy assassination, whatever that. Something
yeah,
61
I know
or
what you.
whatever. Yeah, that
Yep.
So he, his friend basically is like, "Hey, I got a weird time travel closet," and he's like, "What?" but like, it's like basically
Come
it's
to my
like
diner.
it comes
It's
to my
okay.
diner. There's a closet that'll take you back to this specific date and time, and then you can. But that one was interesting because you could play with it. You go back in there, and eventually they're trying to stop the assassination of Kennedy, right?
Hmm.
And then, but you go back all the way to like 1961 or something. You go back way too far. So he actually ends up living 5 years in the past. But like a couple times he just goes and then he comes back and then it resets all the way back to the original point whenever you leave and come back.
Yep.
With the exception of when he finally, spoilers, does the quote unquote right thing, completes the mission and comes back to a dystopian time travel. The
Yeah.
only time he saw a difference in the future, because nothing had changed up to that point. He hadn't made any effects, and then, but that was an interesting one because it was both multiverse and also mixed in like some butterfly effect because he could remember any changes he made. He could go back and be like, okay, I screwed this up. Let me go back and I'll fix it. Except that you always had to go back to the same save point and then hope, wait until you get to your fuck up and not fuck it up again. But with the knowledge that you fucked it up, so do you cause another fuck up and trying to not fuck it up, right? That's
And that's where
you don't go in
it gets
past.
real slippery with course correcting,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the ideal too of going back in time. What was meant to happen will always happen, no matter what you do, no matter what you try to do. Something will always get in your way. Like with James Franco trying to go back to stop the case, there's always this
Oh,
way every time. And but then once he started doing it enough, he
yeah.
started figuring out how to get around it, which is how we get to the dystopian ending that you would get, because he was like, look, I know this is coming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to dodge this. I know this is coming. I'm going to avoid that. I know this
Yeah.
is coming. He had it all figured out. So
And
it
that's
gets tricky.
yeah, and that's kind of also where you get the what do they technically call it? Where you just got stuck in a temporal loop, Groundhog Day style. You live the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
moments over and over until you eventually fix the thing that you're supposed to fix, and and so many shows have done it that I actually I enjoy. Like I like what Stargate SG-1 did when it was him and Teal'c stuck in a loop until they figured out how to stop the Stargate from exploding. But at some point, they just gave
Mhm.
up and just started fucking around, like playing golf. They're like, "What are you doing? What are you?" It's like, "What are you doing, Colonel O'Neill?" And they're just playing golf into the gate because they don't care today. They're taking today off. Um,
I mean, you have the freedom at that point. You know what time it is.
Literally, yeah, yeah. But like, I like the idea that you could only go back in time so far, but like it's an annoyingly short amount of time. Like you got 6 minutes. Oh, fuck. What am I gonna do in 6 minutes? It was like, go back. You got 6 minutes to fix this. You can't even get anywhere. Can't even do anything. But they always say it's like, well, you got 2 weeks. You got 2 days. 24 hours. Some amount of time where you can fix this one thing from happening that caused all this. I mean, Star Trek did it. Next Generation did it at one point, where they got stuck in a loop like that, and they had to figure out how to avoid the other ship hitting them and exploding, and then they had to send themselves a message through the next loop, that kind of stuff, which is always fun. It's when they kind of try to figure it out, and they also when you're in space, you can just make up whatever the fuck you want, as to how time travel works. I like how the later seasons of like Voyager, for instance, they're just like, okay, we're going to do a lot of time travel. Time travel is now going to be our new thing, because we've done all the other stuff. Let's do time travel, to the point that the so-called time division of Starfleet in the future literally says that Voyager shows up on our scopes way too often. Y'all need to quit this shit. Like, you guys keep fucking with time. Please stop.
You get to a certain point also, with a series or a movie or anything. Once you introduce the idea of time travel, you know that now it's just, you've kind of gone off the rails, and you kind of give yourself a reset button or a get out of jail free card to some degree,
Yeah.
because you can just say, oh well, time travel.
You can
You
undo a
know,
decision that was made in the previous season or something, like killing off
uh-huh.
a character or whatever. Or I like It's a Wonderful Life, where you basically like you
Yeah,
wish yourself out of other people's lives, but then you come back in later. Even Castle did that for one episode, which was funny. They had already done all the weird tropes like aliens and G-men and whatever stuff. Then they did
yeah,
time travel Wishmaster style kind of shit by accident, where he wished himself out of. But I always like those episodes because the version we know of the character takes the place of the character that is in that universe and has no idea how to live their life. You know,
uh,
and I always find that
so
interesting.
that's something that I think about too when it comes to the ideal of time travel, movies or shows or whatever it may be. Is primarily you'll have instances where there's physical time travel,
Yeah.
like you're moving about, and with time lapse it was a little bit different
Mm,
because you had a camera that was kind of predicting the future for them or predicting events,
yeah.
and it got
That movie
kind of,
was fucky. That movie got a little fucky by the end of it,
yeah,
and like and I knew
yeah,
that they're watching it. My brain starts ticking, and I'm just like, okay, there's something else going on here, and I know we're gonna find out what it is, and of course we eventually do find out what it is. But then with that movie in particular, go watch it on Tubi for free, y'all. It's just right there. You don't even have to pay for anything. I just discovered Tubi, so it's like I can go watch movies in one night.
really,
I knew of it, but I never bothered to use it. I already have so many other streaming services. But like the the one thing I liked about the end, not going into too much spoilers, was the hubris and the arrogance kind of
hmm,
that particular character,
yeah,
because
yep,
they thought they could fix events without realizing that's not what was happening here. It's like
yeah,
you're
yep,
just being shown what you're going to do, and then they hard adhere to it instead of trying to avoid it. And in trying to avoid it, they realize that they end up making it all happen. Like it was a lot of predestination kind of stuff, but
yeah,
but the funky twist in that movie is just basically it's just normal human type hubris, and that's usually how it goes. We get big in our own head, and like it happened with almost every character except for one, like the one person of reason. There's always the one guy
yeah,
who says destroy the thing so we can not do this, and everybody else is like no, no. And I thought that was interesting about Primer as well. They're very similar in the human greed and arrogance that they both took advantage of their versions of time travel for the same reason, you know. Um, but the idea that they had a camera that predicted the future, or let you
yeah,
see one frame of your future, you know.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's what I think is interesting about just using that device of time travel, because we always see, oh, again, you're being pushed through time
Hmm.
versus you're staying put where you are, but you're having something kind of give you a glimpse into what's to come. And like you said, they're trying to avoid it, but in reality they're just kind of walking right into it, thinking, oh well, we're gonna outsmart this thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, no, you're
It,
not.
and then they become slave to it, but
Hmm.
by choice initially they become slave to it, and then by force, and in several ways they become slaves to
Yeah.
this version of time travel. And then I love when the one person who knows the kind of truth about it comes in and tells them the truth. They literally reject it so hard, shit happens, right? And then like by the end of that movie, I'm just like, yeah, yeah, I could definitely see all of this legit happening. Like, if somebody had this thing, this is almost 100% how the shit would go. You know?
And that's what I was saying when I was talking to you about it. I was like, I like that because it kind of gives you somewhat of a relatively realistic idea of how you think it would happen versus again a lot of other stuff that we see. It's just set there to kind of fit a narrative. Like the time travel is just a device, but there's a bigger story that time travel just has to fit around. Where for this movie, like the time travel, you know, is a device, but it's also kind of the destination as well.
Yeah.
Like this is all of it
Like,
instead of just like this is a component of it.
yeah, it's the fact that it showed you how you're going to end up in 24 hours. And just like, but no, at no point did they go, maybe we shouldn't do it. They just said, okay. At first, it's an acceptance of, oh, okay, well, we already know this is going to happen, so okay. And then after that, it became, oh, okay, so now that we've been shown it, we have to make it happen, or else nothing happens with it. And then it just snowballs from there. But at no point, and this is where I thought the hubris came in, was that they thought they were controlling it, or at least the one
Hmm.
character thought that they could control and manipulate it, when in fact they were just making it all happen. But because they were fucking with things, they at some point they didn't see that they were just causing it to all happen. They were only reacting to what they knew they were going to do, therefore making everything happen to themselves. But then thinking they could change it because they knew ahead of time things were going to change. It's like, no, you're not changing anything. You're just following the path you're shown. It's kind of silly.
But I mean, that also goes to show human arrogance.
Oh yeah.
You know, we think like, oh well, we are smart, and that's the thing too. These are just regular ass motherfuckers. It's
Yeah.
not like these motherfucking scientists or anything. Scientists, at least, there's a little bit of like, maybe it makes sense because you're a scientist and you think this, and you go through your theories and experiments and hypothesis. Whereas we're just regular motherfuckers, with
Yeah.
a gambling problem,
Yeah.
and here we go thinking we're gonna outsmart this thing.
Yeah.
You got a gambling problem. You're not outsmarting anything. You got a problem. You're a junkie.
Yeah. And then of course it just all goes wrong from there. And that's what I thought was just funny about it. It's just like, well, maybe if we don't do this, and then the one guy's like, no, 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 we have to do this. I'm like, but why? No, no, we have to. But literally, we don't. No, we have to. It's just so. And then like just, but I think back to Primer, because that movie fucked with my brain, because I watched it, as I was going to bed that night. You told me about it, and the short movie was it like 117 minutes or something. Not even 2 hours, or 107
Yeah.
minutes, real short.
Yeah, I
And
was gonna say 107. It was very very short.
yeah, and I watched it via YouTube. I rented it on YouTube, which is pretty decent, like $3. You just rent virtually anything. Um, and that one, like, I love that the time travel is not technically ever explained. They just made a thing that caused time travel to happen. And by the way, not a good movie. Like, it's like, as a movie, it's not good.
No.
It's clearly, I mean, I know it was a low budget, like super low budget indie film, and that was clear, and it's from '04, so it is what it is. But this dude, Shane, I forgot his last name, that came up with the idea for it, also helped on Looper. Helped them work out their time travel causal loops and stuff like that on Looper, which was interesting. But the idea that these two dudes who just work for some tech company and they're just trying to invent a thing, they came up with the idea that I guess it was supposed to reduce the mass of an object, basically, for whatever reason. And I guess the idea was it was either they've discovered it was like aging the thing so much that its mass disappeared. They thought they were just breaking the laws of physics by reducing the mass. And then that whole weird thing about the mold is just like that was weird in and of itself. But I guess that was their way in. But like the more I actually I went to the wiki because on the wiki they actually have a map of the timelines that has been updated as of March of this year. Like somebody's still breaking down the
Wow.
time travel stuff. And the best way it could be explained was that just given the way it works. So they create a machine that you put shit in it. While it's in it, it's technically however long the machine has been running since it turned on. You can send something back in time that amount of time. They flip it on 6 a.m. They hop in it at noon, sit in it for 6 hours. They wake up at 6 a.m. The same day. And so they come up with this scheme to send themselves back in time and play stocks, basically. But the one thing I never understood about it is how were they ever going to bank on it? Because they just kept going. Like I guess at some point they just thought they were in a singular timeline, which they kind of make it out to be. But by the end of it, you realize there's no way they've come out of this completely unscathed. Because the first like mindfuck was whenever when Abe takes Aaron to the U-Haul, which by the way was shot in Texas, which I thought was funny. All these Texas movies just keep coming up. So he takes him to the U-Haul place and kind of leads him down this thing. Like, we need like a place where we have climate control and all this stuff. And then he look, a U-Haul place. And he's like, okay, don't get mad. And he's like, what? And he said, here's the binoculars. And then there's Abe walking into the thing to go do his first time travel experiment or go back. Either way, it gets a little fucky at that point because at that point it does what Back to the Future does where they've gone back in time and now they have to avoid themselves and basically do a whole bunch of shadowy bullshit, and then at some point they just end up back where they started, I guess, in a way. But the machines were one-way machines, so if somebody was in it, you couldn't use it. And then I was gonna say the clever way they get around that later is interesting, but also I love the just like PVC fucking cage with some shit strapped to it. That was the best props I've ever seen. It's like time travel. It's just a PVC cage with some plastic wrap. Climb in it. It's fine.
And that's where our problems have come in. Is like we've always thought time travel had to be super complicated. When in reality, it just took some PVC and a couple wires and
literally not even a
you
control
make time
box.
travel happen.
Like the device they create, like at the beginning and put it in the box, so to speak, it looks complicated. It looks like something real. You don't see fuck all after that. It's just literally like PVC cage and you crawl inside it and it makes a weird noise. But I like the idea that like they added some real time to the time travel. We always think time travel is going to be instant. You go through a portal, your machine pops out the other side. Hey, baby. Your spaceship travels across the universe. You going to bed?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll join you here in a while. Love you.
Yeah.
I do.
Sure you do.
I do.
Okay, bye.
Good night, baby. But this one, they actually had the real consequence. You could only go back as long as the machine was turned on, and you had to sit there for all of those hours, whether it was 6 hours, 12 hours, 4 fucking days. And you had to bring the right amount of food with you. You had to bring oxygen because everything's going with you, and you're in a sealed thing. It's fucking crazy. And the real mental stakes of doing that, where like they've gone so many times they don't know what day it is, and then they think shit is changing when it's not, and they're like wait and they're watching like a game and he's like, hold on, wait a minute, this game isn't going to end here, they don't have enough points, and they're like, oh wait, never mind, they get a free throw and then a penalty, and then they go, okay, yeah. So like they're going through so much, it's fucking with them, but they're doing it for monetary gain, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Time travel profits.
And that's the thing that I kind of liked about this as well, is that it had a sense of realism and the ideal of, like you said, with the time travel, it wasn't just an instantaneous thing, but also they weren't doing things because of the way that you had to kind of operate the device of time travel. You had to wait out the time that you're going to, this wasn't something where it's like, oh, we could jump 2 weeks into the past or into the future.
Yeah.
it had a sense of like, okay, if there is a thing of time travel, some doof figures it out in his fucking garage or a storage facility, you know, it isn't going to be like a snap of the finger and you end up in, you know, 2074.
Hmm.
You're going to have to actually earn that travel.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's important about, something like this is that you add some sort of sense of realism to a thing that we don't really know is real yet. So you have to kind of make it tangible
Hmm.
in some way.
Yeah. And the funny thing is they did it so low budget, but made it work. Was funny. Like, I mean, so in game you get crazy Pym particle portals through the past with
Yeah.
with the quantum GPS. Fine, they just made all that shit up, but they could get anywhere they wanted in time and space, and then get back home, which is really what they wanted, right? In Doctor Who, you have the TARDIS. It technically doesn't even really move anywhere. The portal just ends up where you want it, and you just step out. Even though it's technically a spaceship, it doesn't really move through space very often, or it can, but usually when it's going through time, it's just appearing and reappearing, wherever it needs to, virtually instantaneous. Even one instance where it landed inside itself and caused all kinds of fucking problems. Because technically the TARDIS should not be able to land inside itself. That's, you know, that's about as fucky as this movie was. But they also believe that time is completely malleable, and it's not like as they usually say, a strict progression from point A to point B. It's basically like time exists everywhere always. So like you can have an effect on things, you can change something, and then you could see what happens in the future, and then you could just kind of fuck with it a little bit depending on how far you go with it, and then you see consequences of that. But the TARDIS protects you from that. Same thing, kind of like what I was saying with the DeLorean. It seems like there's some type of field that once you use it, kind of protects you a little bit past that, because you see things change, but you don't see people change anymore. Like Marty doesn't accidentally nearly write himself off when they're fucking around in 1885. Like he could have easily like fucked something up with it, with what was it, Seamus, his great great great
Yeah.
grandfather.
Oh, Seamus McFly.
Yeah, Seamus McFly, which was weird because in that timeline he was married to Leah Thompson, which still a lucky man, but either
Yeah.
way. But the fact that interacting with that family back then didn't fuck up anything for him in the future. They had bigger stakes, like saving Clara so the ravine doesn't get renamed. Fucking with the Griff, not Griff. What was this? Mad Dog Tannen, whatever
That dog cannon.
whatever his actual name was. I don't even remember. Buford. That's what it was. I'm surprised I pulled that out of my ass. But like you see bigger reactions, but what I would have loved to have seen is the changes to 2015 after fucking with 1885. Like we see the mild effects in 1985, and then should have seen some of the effects in 1955, but we never go back there. Kind of sad. I actually enjoyed 1955 in that movie. It was just a calmer time, but you never saw dire straits except for what they went to 2015 to kind of fix. They want to just make sure his kids didn't end up in jail by, bringing Marty in to play the part of his son, which was a little weird. But then you also get the effects at the end of 3 that change 2, the ending of 2. So it's just weird because they get protected from the changes of 2 that should be to themselves, but in the future now it's unwritten. At the end they're like, you can do whatever. And then there's, oh god, don't get me started on fucking Terminator's time travel and the fuckiness there.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think too with Back to the Future, and just considering when it was written, and again, it's a lighthearted film, essentially. I think the bigger point that they're trying to make. I don't know actually what their fucking point was when I really think of it. I watched that movie a million times, but the thing is, you know, we talk about Doc not really being affected by any of it. I think that's more so just a matter of poor writing,
yeah,
because Christopher Lloyd, though he was, a main character of the movie, he wasn't the main focal point of the movie, despite being the inventor of, the time machine. He was just the catalyst
Yeah.
to the story.
He,
Whereas,
he was a plot
Marty
device.
was, yeah, yep. Marty was basically everything that needed to be done. I mean, and even when we go to the third one and they save Clara Clayton, so you don't get Clayton Ravine, but now it's called Clint Eastwood Ravine.
Yes.
That's a big effect because
how is there no effect on Clint Eastwood in the future? Like,
correct,
Clint Eastwood that they have no proof ever lived at that time is now dead, and now it's called Eastwood Ravine, and then God knows what else they changed because they blew up a train that never blew up. So we don't even know what would have happened there. We don't know that train had any positive effects on the future on its own, but we just destroy it all willy-nilly,
Well, I mean, also when you start playing with time displacement, because now you have Clara Clayton who's married to Doc Brown and they have kids. It's like, none of that there should be some kind of fuckery going on in the universe. Like Doc, would always say, "Oh, that will create a paradox." It's like, motherfucker, you just created a paradox.
But here's the weird part about it is because a person who is originally from 1985, who has now traveled back to 1885, changed the past that should eventually catch up to him somehow through time displacement or the ripple effects into the fact that they, like you said, have kids. So he's now affecting his own life and future in the past, but then now they're time traveling everywhere. They got the train, they go to the future with the kids, and now they just go wherever the fuck after that. They have a TV show eventually, or a cartoon rather, where the kids mostly star. And he rebuilds the DeLorean for the fuck of it, I guess. That means he had to go find another DeLorean at that time and actually build the time machine again. But I guess, he could have gathered up all the parts. But an interesting sequel would have been like somebody else finds the remains of the DeLorean, figures out what it is, and builds another time machine. That would be like the 1993 reboot, basically. But the idea that you could fuck with time so much, but like only benefit from it, like it was only in the bad version of 1985 where did Doc see any issues. But the funny thing is, in that version, they come back to 1985. Marty's been killed by Biff and buried. Doc has been committed. So
no, George has been killed. George got killed.
George got killed.
Marty's dad.
But I thought they tried to kill Marty.
Marty was in private school.
Yeah, I thought that was a cover for it, and they actually had killed Marty, and that's why they were surprised that he was still alive.
Yeah, you're right, because he reveals that later.
Yeah, that they had taken, like, they were like, "Why are you back?" He should have been in private school. But basically, they yada yada their way out of that version of Marty and Doc in that universe not being around. And of course, in that version, Doc never invented a time machine or anything because he got committed at some point in like the late 70s or early 80s. So, his lab and everything, even though he has his garage, it's just some garage now. It's, he shouldn't have any of his equipment, shouldn't have anything, which it seems like he doesn't. No. It seems like it's basically what's left over from 1955 before that, and it's just a wreck. And then that's when they realized that, oh yeah, we fucked up. Like, it's like then they find out they didn't fuck it up. Someone, that's when they found out that Biff did. But the fact that once again Biff put himself out of existence in the future, but in changing everything, the DeLorean itself should have ceased to exist. Doc and Marty should have ceased to exist. But like I said, there had to have been some plot armor there based around the DeLorean's own existence that kept them from truly being affected after the first movie. Because even Jennifer completely became a different actress. I mean, that was a hell of a multiversal change.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too with that. It's like, okay, so stick with the second one.
Mm-hmm.
Biff goes back. Old Biff goes back, gives the sports almanac to young Biff. And the thing that just, of course they just, kind of bullshit their way through it. It's like, okay, he gets the sports almanac, he starts winning, and he becomes a millionaire.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, so you still play with the ideal that she marries George McFly and still has the family. It's like that should probably not even be a thing, though. You would think
Well,
if
no,
the game is just her ploying for money, or him buying her off for love.
yeah,
But the way they wrote it is, it still happens. He kills George, and
yeah.
it. I mean, it's sloppy writing.
Well, no, because it makes sense because all of that takes place after the dance. So the almanac and all that,
So
like, so the changes to the timeline don't happen until after the dance. So he's already been punched by George. Marty's already done the thing and all that. So the idea that they ended up together was still there, but I love that their sibling or the brother and sister disappear entirely. No reference of them ever again. Um, actually no, there's literally no reference to them ever again after that. So yay.
no, the brother was mentioned in some capacity. The sister
In
wasn't,
they were
but they
They were
in
there in
eighty.
the end of the first
What?
one. They were there at the end of the first one and possibly right at the
Yeah.
beginning of the second one, maybe. But I think it was just the mom and the dad in the new positive 1985. So 1985 2, technically speaking, because 3 happens in 2. We're new
Yeah.
timeline rewrites. So, but after that, the brother and the sister, I don't think are ever seen or mentioned again. Because I remember,
So you do see the brother, when they come back
mhm.
at the end of the first one, and
Yes,
everything's kind of
and the
cool.
sister, yeah, and the sister.
Yeah, and then the second one, I thought they're in the future because the family all gets together.
No,
I I
no, it's
thought
just
at least the sister was there.
no, it was just Marty's family. It was Marty's direct family and the mom and dad. No, no brother and sister in the future.
Then why am I remembering her old? Like the sister old. I don't
That
remember
was
the
Jennifer.
brother ever again.
No, the only people
No,
who
I know she was old.
the only people who came to the house was mom and dad. They're the only ones who
Maybe I saw her in something else old.
maybe because it was basically just Michael J. Fox in makeup except for whoever was playing Jennifer at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Elizabeth Shue.
yeah, Elizabeth Shue. That's right. I always forget which one was which. But they excuse me. But yeah, they basically just write those characters out almost like they just aren't important enough because when you're hearing mom and dad said back and forth, it's Marty's kids talking to them, and then Jennifer's
Yeah.
not there. She comes in as young Jennifer's trying to leave, coming in with more food for the little get together. But yeah, no, I'm pretty sure the brother and sister are never talked about again, which is kind of funny in my mind. It's like, well, they were there, we just don't bother with them ever again. They're like they're tertiary characters at best, right? We care more about Biff's gang in the past more than anybody else, right? Or than the brother and
True,
sister.
true.
But the idea that they rewrite so much shit, they come back to whatever timeline it is. In theory, there's another version of Doc and Marty at every time they come back. But when they come back to
Yes.
the perfect future, there's currently, and this is the fucky part because it's the next morning after the 1955 adventure.
Yes.
That Marty has gone back in time. That Doc is dead, but he also gets up and he goes away into the future. But then it sort of all cycles back in on itself, assuming that other changes have not happened now to the past. So that's the problem. It's a total closed loop. At least the first movie is a total closed loop. After that, it gets wonky.
Yeah.
But the fact that at no point does the DeLorean cease to exist in any changes that happened between 1955 or 1985. It never ceases to exist, or else Biff would have not been able to go back in time. Paradox, blah, 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 blah. That's the problem when you get into these paradoxes, which is crazy, which I love the fact that Primer purposely set up a paradox to happen, and that's when they prove that paradoxes won't happen. You just get a new timeline. So
Yep.
that was interesting.
And the new timeline, is what kind of gives us our whole multiversal
Hmm.
flavor, to a degree, because again, it's like, okay, if Dante of 1989 makes a decision to stay in Flint, Michigan, but then I go back in time, and and fuck with something there, I'm not gonna be able to come back here.
Yeah.
Like if I come back to 2023, I'm not in Millersville, Maryland now. This is somebody else's house. And now it's like, well, shit. Where do I go? How do I go somewhere? Oh, I'm a man displaced.
Yeah.
I'm cable.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
Bishop. It's like, I'm all fucked up. Now I'm stuck in 1989, having to fuck around with, young Dante, who's dumb as fuck, and his two brothers who are just following his lead because well, they're dumb too.
Yeah.
But it all gets very, very goofy, and that's why like I said, with Primer, I like, and even time lapse, they kind of play with it in small increments versus doing these big chunks,
About as
because I
small
think
as
when
it
you do
can
the big
get. Yeah.
chunks, when you do the big chunks, that's where it starts to get very slippery. I mean, even Project Almanac, they were kind of moving in a direction where they were doing small chunks, and then it just kind of went off the rails. And
They start taking the
but
big
what they were
bites.
doing with the small chunks, those small chunks were having big effects. Like the kids went to travel, and try to win the lottery, but they fucked up one number, so they didn't win like the big jackpot, but they won enough
Mhm.
enough to still change their lives. But and doing that kind of in the small pieces, because they only went a few days, it was like, okay, not a big deal. But then they started really fucking around with it, and the movie got a little. I didn't hate it, but it just started getting very. I think about it when I used to write as a kid. I would start off so strong, but I would get to a point where I got bored
Mhm.
or impatient, and then I just started getting sloppy, like with the ending. Like you have a good first part, second part, and then once you get to that ending, it's like I just want to be done. And that's how I felt like Project Almanac went. They were just like, we just want to be done with this shit.
Yeah.
Like we had a good first act and second act, and the third one was just like, I'm done. I'm out of here.
Yep. And
Just give it to him.
you can see a lot of that does definitely happen. And I mean, it happens so often that you write yourself into a corner, especially when you're doing something when you're trying to do something grand on a small scale, and you end up writing yourself into a corner because you have a big idea that you're trying to write small, and you can't help but make it bigger by time, no pun intended. And then you're like, okay, now how do I get out of this? And the funny thing is, because Dragon Ball Z also has time travel involved, and the way they handled it, and at least in Z and again in Super, was that when future Trunks comes to the past to try to fix things, the only thing he manages to fix is that timeline, but it has zero effect on his. So it's actually a new branch timeline, which we find out is technically illegal and is supposed to be fixed by the gods, but because they're lazy as fuck, they don't do anything. But then they, even in that point, they try to fix that future from happening in their current time, thinking that, okay, a god can fix it, and the god's arrogance proves that they still can't fix it even when they manage it. They fix the immediate problem so that it can't happen for them, but it doesn't change what's happening in the future. And they keep jumping back and forth for rest because, like, we can't do shit. The bad guy's stuck in the future, but he's still destroying everything. So we got to come back to the past to get some respite, and then we'll go back and try to at least fix the problem there. And I like the idea that in that version of time travel, no matter what they do in the past, it's not fixing anything in the future for them. It's like they can only just get away from it, basically, and they can fix this timeline by knowing what's going to happen, and that part, that I guess that comes into what time lapse technically did. We're gonna fix the future, but that in this case, it's literally knowing events far enough in advance, not not 24 hours where you're like, Well, no, it's like when you've got like 5 years or 15 years of advantage, you're like, okay, here, I can bring back medicine so you don't die from a disease you don't need to die from, which ironically came from the future with Trunks, which is even funnier. So that means that Trunks always had to come to the past, but in the one trip, he never brought the medicine, so therefore it killed everybody, so whatever. And then they caused Cell to happen. So, the same time machine gets used by the bad guy to come to the past, and now he's stuck further back in time and looking for shit that he lost in the future due to him being also from another timeline where the androids got destroyed. So, like, they really start fucking with that timeline, but the solution can't be found in fixing the past, is going to the past for you to just solve your current problem. Because your future can't be fixed by anything you do in the past, which is also what Endgame did. It's like, we can't fix our past here. You go to the past, that past is now your future. It's like you stay there, that is now your timeline. That's where you're going to stay. But if you come back, it has no effect on your current life, Like, I like the idea where that is the solution, not the Back to the Future. You're jumping in and out of the altered timeline where you can only come back to your, unchanged timeline. Basically, it's just multiverse hopping at that point, right? With time travel.
Yeah.
So, like, the idea that you could go back go back, but, like, jump to another universe and see what you of that universe did with not moving from Michigan, or any of the bigger moves you made in your life. What if you just, never ended up with Sarah? What if it's just something else? Who knows?
Yeah.
What if I joined the Marines like I had planned to do? Would my life be different from there? I'll tell you what, I'd probably be dead in Afghanistan if I'm going to be honest with you. But
I was just about to say, like,
that was 2000.
I could have gone into the Marines myself and ended.
Yep. So that was 2000. So I would have been going in once graduated, and I would have been directly into that war, like a few friends of mine did, and I saw what happened to them, and they were on the front lines, like. And I was not going to be a frontline guy. I was going to be the guy in the back listening to the coded communications and, doing whatever. But, I think about that. It's like, okay, what if I did marry my high school sweetheart like I had planned to do, and all that kind of stuff. What ifs? It's all the what ifs, and that's a pretty decent show on Disney Plus. But, as it goes, and like seeing that animated actually was a little nice. But also that's just what happens if you change this. What happens if you change this? But the one thing that was interesting with Primer is the fact that while they were technically creating new timelines, which I don't know, people keep saying they created new timelines, but if they created a new timeline, multiple versions of them wouldn't be in it, because it would just be the original that left and then the new one that ended up wherever, in my opinion. But that's just the way I looked at it. Is like they're looping back. But if it was a new timeline, then I don't know how you end up with multiples in there, because you wouldn't come back to that timeline. You would come to a different one entirely. Because by the end of that movie, there's 3 Aarons and 2 Abes in the final timeline. And they're all just there. Like, that's the thing. Is like they none of them disappear. None of them pop off to go do other timeline stuff. They're all there, technically speaking, by the end of that movie. And that's no paradox for having multiple yous in the same timeline.
So with that, even, being an ideal, it's like, again, there's got to be some kind of consequence, I mean, again, this is just in theory, because I mean, like I said earlier, we don't really know, but you imagine, there would be some kind of disruption of some sort.
Where's the TVA?
Something's off. Yeah. That's where the TVA steps in and say, okay, motherfucker.
Yeah.
like there's 6 of you here.
Yeah. That's when Owen Wilson shows up on a jet ski to fucking beat your ass. Send you to the end of time with your other variants. But like, it just, the fact that there were no real consequences other than if you fucked up in the time travel, like coming out too early, or you didn't bring the right amount of supplies. We saw what happened to, the physical ramifications. And even the one guy who uh, came back without their knowledge and ended up there. Which was an interesting way they shot that scene. They're talking about a character that you don't see. They're just like, yeah, did you see him? Yeah, it looked like he was scruffy. It's like, you just drove by that guy. You notice he had like 3 days worth of scruff on his face? No, fuck off. It's dark. It's night. And he was in a car by himself. You didn't see that shit. But like, the fact that they're like, okay, how did he get the time machine? How did he get back here? All this other stuff. And that was a cog in their plans that they didn't, plan for. But I like the idea that that movie got away from just the greed and then turned into the arrogance, but also with the plan of we're going to fix things. By the end of that movie, there's some issues that we need to fix. Um, and then I guess and that's the only way I guess they technically got new timelines by the changes they made. So I don't know. Is like that was the weird part. It's like you changed the timeline, but you still end up with multiple U's in that same timeline. So I don't know. That's why that one particular movie is a bit wonky that way. But like
Yeah.
time lapse, there was no alternate timeline. There was just the same timeline. You just happened to be able to see into your own future. It was like at that point
Yeah.
you can't avoid that shit.
And that's where that one it's like it's a tricky one because it's like it's not necessarily time travel in the traditional sense of what
Hmm.
time travel is, but it is, playing with, the future and being able to see. So maybe, calling it a time travel movie is a little too strong, but it still plays with the elements of it.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, images
there's
are transported through time technically.
yeah. So, so I mean, it's I guess just terminologies, I guess
And
essentially, but it is time travel in a sense.
and it makes in a way it makes more sense than going back in time technically. Like if you look at it
Mhm.
as it's seeing forward somehow.
Yes.
It's always the somehow. Maybe it's bending things so that it's with a tiny black hole and it's bending reality around it to where it can technically see 24 hours in the future. Through around the lensing of the black hole. But it would have to have some type of effect on that on gravity or not gravity on time. It would have to be some type of gravity effect, like we learned in Interstellar. That's probably the most realistic sense of time travel in the beginning of the movie,
Yeah.
not the end, but like the fifth dimensional time travel shit. Sure, because once you get past our normal 3 dimensions, the next one would be time. It's like once we're
Yes.
past space, the fourth dimension has to be time, and only a fifth dimensional being would be able to manipulate that to that degree. So, but beyond that, when they're playing with going near the black hole and they're traveling so fast, or just the sheer gravity of the black hole creates time dilation. That's realistic time travel in our universe. Just immense gravity fucking with the literal, speed of time around you. You know, uh,
So there was this show on Hulu as well that I think I mentioned it to you, called Kindred,
yes,
and that fucks around with time travel. I mean, again, the big thing that I just have issues with some of the stuff is it makes for a good story, it makes for fun, a fun narrative, but it's like it doesn't feel grounded.
yeah,
Like with Kindred, you kind of jump into a story where a young black woman travels back to
okay,
1600s, I believe.
okay, yeah. I did see it advertised, and I watched the trailer for it. Okay, I just didn't get around to watching it.
It's a good show. It's a really good show. Um, I, I started listening to the audiobook,
Mhm.
and it matches up pretty well. So I do like when the book and the show or the movie, you know, it it has its differences, obviously, but the world building that they did in the book is translated very well to the show.
Oh, good, good.
So as you're listening to it, you can see it the way that they presented it to you in the show. But even with that, uh, the time travel when it doesn't involve a machine, I guess, of some sort, it gets a little weird because it presents the ideal that this is a you thing,
Hmm.
because she would just disappear
Yeah.
and then reappear in what would seem like seconds, maybe minutes, but she'd be gone for days or even weeks, and at some point, years.
Yes, she's
So
just jumping to another time period and spending however much time there, then coming back in the blink of an eye, basically. For
yes,
people
and
relative, right?
the whole thing is she's basically being sent back because she's on a mission that she's not aware of yet. She kind of discovers that she has to save someone because, and this is where it gets a little funky because it's like basically if she doesn't save this person, then she won't exist.
Okay.
It's like it's an interesting dynamic, but at the same time it's like, I mean, where does it begin though? Because that's where you have to now start questioning things with time travel. Is like, well, if this is your thing, where did it begin? How did it begin? Because this wasn't always the thing, you would imagine. So it's like if she has to go back and save this person so that way she exists, how did
It
she
it would have
come
to.
to exist to begin with?
That's the way it always works. Is that it has to be a causal loop. Usually, something has to exist for the sake of it existing. But like in this case, like she exists because her ancestor or whoever didn't die, and the only reason that person didn't die is because she exists. So the only way that turns into basically that's a bootstrap paradox. It's a thing that exists in and of itself outside of time, and there's no explanation for the beginning of it. It just is, and that's one of the
Yeah.
more interesting time aberrations that I like. And when Doctor Who did it and explained it, it was really interesting. But actually kind of Harry Potter did it to a degree in Prisoner of Azkaban with the time turner, and then when he did the Patronus, by the side of the lake, the reason
Yeah.
the reason he knew he could do it in the moment is because he had technically seen himself do it. So like, but that is also it's a closed loop. It always happened that way. So it's the same thing with Kindred. It would have to have
Yeah.
always happened that way, unless there was some manipulation somewhere else. But in which case, it still has to always happen. You can't get to point B without point A, and point A can't exist without point B. So it has to be the loop no matter what. Um, So I guess it's an interesting idea, regardless of which one, chicken and egg. But realistically, they have to
Yeah.
exist. They have to exist because of each other. It's like the chicken can't
Yeah.
exist without
I mean,
the
it's a fun
egg.
show.
Yeah.
I still recommend it. That, and then
Excuse me.
I guess again, my big thing on things with time travel, you have the ideal of you know machines or just individuals that move through time,
Or
or
magic
individuals
things.
that move through time through using loss as the example,
Hmm.
where they are moving through time because of anomalies in the earth. They happen to be on a specific flight at a specific time, and this way they can get bumped back to 1977.
Yeah.
It's like
I thought it
things
was.
like that,
I
and
thought it was
they
because
fuck with
Ben.
that
I
too.
thought it was because Ben turned the big ship wheel in the ground.
So that was the first time,
That was when it
but
went
then
back.
when they had to come back, when the Oceanic Six
Uh
had to
huh.
come back to the island, they all had to be on a flight together and at a specific time, and it had to be this specific flight. And they were going to pass through and end up back on the island in 1977.
Oh, that is
It's
right. They did end up in the
like
past. I forgot about that. They didn't end up.
and I
Yeah.
mean, that could have still been through causation of Ben turning the donkey wheel,
Hmm.
because if Ben doesn't turn that donkey wheel, that energy doesn't get released now, and that's not even a viable option for them, you would think. But I don't know, it all gets very, very complicated. And I love the series Lost.
Hmm.
I have it on right now in the background, just because I gotta have something on in the background. But I know a lot of people really, really hate it for one reason or the other. It's like that's fine. I mean, also it's popular just to hate things. I guess it's the cool thing is all the cool kids are hating stuff.
Hmm.
Just enjoy, fucking relax. It's make 'em ups. It's a make believe TV show. If you don't like it, move on. If you like it, keep watching. But you know, I enjoy and even with the fuckery that kind of went about with the sixth season, it was still one of those things where I was like, you know what? It's fine. It's
Uh,
fine. Just play along, but understand that this is all fuckery now,
yeah.
and it's no longer time travel.
Yeah, it's like the time travel aspect of that was interesting, like you said, because like they had to have always been there for it to happen once again. But I think the whole point of that series was everything always happened to get to the point that it was going to happen. And it was cyclical because like you got the numbers, you got different people over time who ended up on the island, going all the way back to Jacob and the Man in Black. And the way that story told character development from literally almost all the way back to the beginning of everything, and then it got very weird right at the end. Like if we're super honest with the weird parallel storylines that were kind of happening at the end there, but then not.
Sure. Yep.
But I mean, I liked it, and especially, and then like a lot of people still argue about the end, but that was the whole idea. They wanted it to be somewhat open to interpretation, but
Hmm.
the time travel aspect to it, the sci-fi aspect to it, or fantasy, whichever way you want to look at it, where you have a magical island that technically moves around, and there's one or two ways where you can know where it is, and there's secret organizations that are built around monitoring the island, and different people who are from there or want to get back to there, and then all these other characters and how they all and the whole show is relationships, which is all it turns into. And the
Yeah.
fact that the series you know itself is kind of a loop by the end of it, because it ends and begins on Jack laying on his back in the jungle, with
Hmm.
the airplane. The whole thing could technically be a loop if they wanted to be. And that, it's one of those great shows. And of course now we get a show that we're both fans of with From, which something
Yeah.
weird is happening there. And I've not started the second season because I haven't signed up for MGM Plus for the 7 day whatever. But
I got you if you need me.
no, I'll do it eventually. I just haven't done it yet. But that show it's playing
We're
on this.
doing 1 month.
Yeah. So well, maybe if they're not too fucky about it like Netflix is, maybe I'll take you up on that. But they that show is also playing with time and space and weirdness too. So in the same way, and God help me if that was somehow in the same universe. They somehow tie it
I,
to the Lost
dude,
universe.
I deep down, I feel like to some weird degree because I don't know, man. Like I don't know if it was you. I was talking to someone about the whispers, and we knew that on Lost the others were
Yes.
out there, and they kind of manipulated that. But I don't know that you ever. I guess they said it was the dead souls that was the whispers. Like Michael. Eventually, pops back up. When you hear the
Hmm.
whispers, and then I think about From, and you don't have the whispers. You actually have monsters in the night.
Yeah.
And that's what I always kind of connect those two. The monsters in the night are the whispers. So there's some weird connection. And I'm not saying that the shows are technically connected, but as I'm like thinking about it, I was like, okay, people end up on this mysterious town, you know, by no fault of their own. They're just driving and they end up there, you know,
And they're
and Lost
stuck.
is kind of a similar thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and they're stuck. And Lost is similar in that where you end up whether you're on a solo race around the world, you end up there, or if you're on a flight from Sydney, Australia to LAX,
Hmm.
and you end up there, and well, just kind of a small spoiler for season two, you get a bus. I think they might have showed it at the end of the first season. I don't know.
I don't remember.
There's a bus that shows up.
Oh,
So, and I
okay.
compare that to Oceanic Flight 815.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
there was a thing. Shit, what show was it? Oh, it was Castle. Castle actually, because I
Okay.
guess it was only a few years after Lost ended. There was an episode where they did
Yeah.
where they had a problem on a plane, and it was Oceanic Airlines, and they didn't do. I thought they were gonna give it 815, but I think it was like 402 or something. I was like, please just go with it, and please give me a character named Jack, just for the hell of it, off screen, or have Matthew Fox or whatever his name was off to the side somewhere.
Yeah.
Something, give
Something.
me something, like, and because that show was so influential in so many ways, especially
Hmm.
with just the storytelling, like in writing
Yeah. Yeah.
characters, like fully fleshing out a giant cast of characters. Like, that's
Yes.
nuts. That was crazy. Like, I mean, there were still plenty of bullshit characters that basically had no effect on the story. They were just victims of destiny. Because even after everything was settled, there were still like 20 people who just didn't do fuck all. They just lived on the beach. They had nothing to do with the chosen ones, right?
Well, even with that too, you still had like part of the main cast of 14 that were kind of, even though they were part of the main cast of 14, they were still kind of side characters. I mean, and when I say side characters, they didn't have like a major impact on the story, but they may have had a connection to another character, such as Claire. She
Yeah.
wasn't a major. Well, she birthed Aaron, and that was kind of a catalyst to season one. And all they're coming for the boy, which ended up being Walt. But you had Claire, who was kind of a side character, but it turns out, oh, spoiler alert, it's Jack's half sister. So
Oh
there's a
yeah, I forgot about
connection,
that.
but like she's still not really devastatingly important, you know. 'Cause, I mean, she was so unimportant that they wrote her off for season five. She
Yeah,
disappeared for a full season
that's
and
true.
then comes back as a crazy woman. But you have characters like that. I mean, you'd have Shannon and Boone,
Yeah.
who were important in their own right, but not really. Your main core, as Hurley would call them the cool kids, was Jack,
Mm-hmm.
Sawyer, Kate, everyone who went on adventures.
Yeah.
That was your core. And
Syed.
even to some degree, yet Saeed, yeah, there's even a point where even when you start digging into that, some of those characters weren't really important to the core, because if you had to say who's your main character, who's the story based around, you
Mm-hmm.
could say Jack, you could say Locke, you could to some degree say Saeed a little bit, you know, but at the end of the day, they did a wonderful job, like you said, developing these characters. I mean, you look at a character like Sawyer from day one, you see him as the asshole. He's
Mm-hmm.
the country boy who's got a bad attitude. Then as you start following his story, you realize he's actually, the bad guy with a heart of gold.
Yeah.
You even see, I remember, was it season four, one of the pivotal points of his characters when he confronts Locke's dad,
Yeah.
and you just see this change in character leading up to that, but even after it, and the development that they did with that character to take him from the bad guy. And even Hurley calls him the leader at some point when
Yeah.
Jack and Kate are missing.
Yep.
He's like, well, you're a leader now. If you go back to episode 2, where you meet this character and you finally get to hear him speak, it's like you're not ever at any point going to expect that guy to be their leader. You're expecting that guy to be the troublemaker. When a raft got set on fire,
Yep.
it made sense that even though he's helping them build it, oh, well, he is kind of a dick and he's a troublemaker. But you get that character redeveloped. You got Locke, who got redeveloped. You had, I mean, the only characters that kind of sort of stayed the same, but even changed a bit, was Jack. And Jack only changed because once they got off the island,
Yeah.
you know, there was the belief now, wait, he went from man of science to a man of faith. And
Yeah.
he's like, now I do believe. But everyone changed, and they developed those characters from what we thought we were getting in the beginning. When we see these characters, and it was kind of a lesson in prejudice. You see a character and you start judging. You see a character like Shannon,
Mm-hmm.
and you judge this character. Oh, she's a spoiled brat. But then you find out what was really going on behind the scenes. Yes, she was a spoiled brat, but the stepmom was kind of pushing the spoiled brat out. So she did kind of have to make it on her own. You have Boone. He's constantly reminding people, "I run a business."
Yeah.
It's like okay, but then eventually he becomes an adventurer and loses his life for it.
Yep.
But he goes from this guy that runs a business to someone who's running through the jungle, on adventures. So the way that they wrote that show, and then it kind of affected other shows as you start watching other things
Yeah.
and other shows trying to mimic it. Like is it Manifest? I think Manifest,
Yeah. The
La
wifey
Brea.
the wifey loves Manifest, and I can't stand it. It's
I
it's too
tried.
it's too much cheese.
Yeah,
A
I
little
can't. I
too much
can't.
cheese.
I tried to give it a full season, and I think also my issue with shows like this, and Lost was the last one I did, is when you start doing shows that go beyond 14 episodes in a season,
Yeah.
you're losing me because you give me a bunch of bullshit filler. Whereas, like, what I loved about the writer strike that affected Lost in season 3 or 4
3. Yeah.
is you kind of got forced to really put that story together in a tight space
Yeah.
and give you all the meat. They did it with Breaking Bad in that final season as well. They gave you all the meat and said, "Look, we only have so much time to do this, so give them the
Yeah.
story." And it was like 8 episodes. Like, oh my god, you know how much better a show is when it's only this many episodes.
Yeah. But we also had to wait a year to get those 8 episodes. That
Oh yeah,
sucked.
well,
That part sucked.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Lost suffered
They-
the same way though because they were in the middle of that strike, and so it was like
Mhm.
3 and 4 is when the strike happened, and then they had to recover. So 4 and 5 were wonky, and those are the ones that kind of turned people off.
Yeah.
But there was a time gap, no pun intended, between seasons. That's where I got lost. No pun intended again, because I watched the first 3 until they did the time travel thing, and then or right before they did the time travel thing, and then I got confused like when I jumped back into an episode, I was like, I missed something, and then it was years later when it was finally on Netflix complete that I finally watched the entire series. So like I saw like the events leading up to, when the people came, the not Penny's boat, the whatever the guy's name was, Locke's dad's people.
Faraday.
Yeah, all those people come into the island, and
Yeah.
they were thinking they were going to get off the island, and they didn't realize how bad it was about to get. That kind of stuff. And then that led up to a lot more of the bigger plot things that happened right there. But that's where I left off, and it was probably a good 6 or 7 years before I watched the entire series, and then I would rewatch it every 5. Like at that point, I was like, I need 5 years on my reset of Lost because it has that big of an effect on me. Is I got to come back to it here in a bit, basically. But I'm well overdue now, so might binge it here. But there's so many damn things to watch now. It's kind of hard to spend so much
Yeah.
time investing in an old series, except the fact that I'm doing it with Castle right now. But I'm in the 8th season, so I've only got so much left.
Yeah.
That's another one.
There's something that they said like a few years back. Well, not even a few years back. This was kind of recently. They're like, if you go back and watch everything from the last 3 years, all the content that's been created, because there's so much now, it'd be impossible for you to watch. They came up with this ridiculous number of years of how long it would take to watch all the new content that came out from 2018 to 2021. And it's like there's just so much stuff to keep up with. I mean, hell, even me with doing So You Like Horror, when I have to do the episodes for the decades, it's tricky because I'm going back to watch old shit, and there's new shit that's coming out that feels like, yo, have you watched this? We gotta watch this. Can we do an episode about this? And it's like, dude, I gotta watch fucking Suspiria. I gotta watch Rosemary's Baby. I got shit to do, man. It's like, and then even catching up with the newer stuff. It's like we're in 23, so 2021 and 2022 and 2023, horror fans are eating good.
Oh yeah.
There's so much horror content, and that's just one genre. That's not even thinking about TV shows that you got to keep up, fantasy, sci-fi, drama. It's like comedies. Everything is so like compact now, like packed in, that you don't have time to go back and binge an old series. Like I like to go back and watch Lost. I like to go back and watch Breaking Bad. Every so often I want to jump into The Sopranos, and it's like, fuck, I don't have time to do all this and then also turn around and say, "Hey, now I got to go watch all the Evil Dead movies."
Hmm.
You know, or I got to turn around and say, "Hey, we're going to do a Friday 13th." We haven't done a Friday 13th episode. Now, but now I got to go watch fucking however fucking many of those there are, what, 11,
At
12?
least 11, yeah.
Like, so, when it comes to the ideal of, trying to catch up on anything and binging it, it's almost like you either have to say to yourself, I'm only committing to this and this alone
Hmm.
for this much time, or you can't do it because you'll drive yourself crazy trying to keep up with stuff. I mean, fuck, you just told me the new Black Mirror dropped, and I was like, oh shit, I thought that was next week. And now I'm pissed because Sarah and I, we won't be able to watch anything tomorrow because my teammate, he's making his MMA debut, so we got people coming over for that. Saturday I'm recording with some chick from Australia, and then Sunday I got to move Colompton to that day. It's like, fuck. Like we can't watch shit this weekend.
Damn, that sucks. I'm gonna watch the whole fucking series and come back and mock you about it.
Fuck.
I'll be
Just
like,
post a
man,
spoiler episode.
yeah, just like motherfucker, you gotta watch. I'm telling you, this first episode, like the fifth season, was already pretty fucky. Like just everything about fifth season of Black Mirror was crazy, and like they're not doing anything too absurd, like time travel, for instance. But like the
Hmm.
virtual reality stuff, the fucking the episode where you could block people, that fucked with me. Like, where you could visually, like, somebody blocks you on Facebook, but in real life,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and how that fucked that guy's life up so bad, like, just because his ex-wife blocked him or his ex-girlfriend blocked him, and then the whole thing with thinking that he has a kid because her kid is now blocked by association, so he assumes it's his kid, but he can't check, and like everything about that show is so fucked up. And then like and funny thing is, like, Ricky hasn't watched it, so I told him he needs to, and he's like, eh. I'm like, no, 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 you need to fucking watch it. So I need you to help bully him into watching Black Mirror. Um,
Oh no! Oh no! 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 We're doing an episode now. We're gonna do a So You Like Horror episode with Ricky and I.
okay,
So I'm gonna shoot him a message now. Hold on.
yeah, there you
He's
go.
getting the message right now. He's about to get fucking annoyed, but he was like, "I'm in." It's like I can always count on Ricky. It's like if I need an episode and it's kind of like that, like 0 hours, like fuck, like Ricky, we need to watch this. He's like, "I'm in." It's like,
That's
okay,
funny. That's
like
funny.
like you're the best team player.
There you go. But yeah,
Uh,
and then Mike, also in our chat, somehow has never watched Black Mirror. I was like, dude, fucking watch. I told him what it was about, and like, well, in general, because it's kind of hard to tell anybody what Black Mirror is actually about. And he's like, that sounds awesome. I was like, yeah, I've only talked about it since I fucking binged it last year. It's like, it's fucking fantastic. It's like even the wife likes it, and she doesn't like anything that's not just like either hardcore crime stuff or bubbly feel good shit. It's just get how women be. It's like they either trying to figure out how to murder you in the worst possible ways, or they're watching the most bubbly shit that you don't want to have anything to do with. But then somehow in between, they'll watch something completely like very heady and nerdy, and they'll be 100% on
yeah.
board. That's like the movie I told you about, Vengeance. Like neither of us knew what we were getting into with that movie, and she really enjoyed it, and so did I. I was like, we had no idea what we were getting into, and that movie ended up being really good, like for what it was.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's an important point that you made there, though, too, is like for what it was. Because I think a lot of people go into movies and series with an expectation of whatever because of who a writer might be or an actor or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like sometimes just go in. Just go in. Don't expect nothing and just say, oh, for what this is, it's really good. Like Phil and I just watched a movie called Killer Kites with a
Yeah.
T, and we actually that's the episode I'm putting out on Friday for So You Like Horror. And we joked about it because it's like for what it was fun. It was a good movie. If I said to you, "Hey, Shoki, you
Hmm.
got to watch this movie," and then you watch it, you'll be like, "What the fuck did you make me watch?" But the thing is, if you go into it knowing these guys aren't taking themselves serious. They're
Mhm.
having fun with it. So for what it is, it's just a indie film with some friends with very very poor special effects.
Mm.
It's
Is it?
like
It's not
when I say
Birdemic
poor,
bad, is it?
yes,
Okay.
yes, it
So
is.
funny thing is, like, because you said that, and I remember watching. I don't know if it was Nostalgia Critic or one of the other reviewers on YouTube, and I remember them talking about some movie where kites were the not villain but thing that was killing people somehow. Is that
That's
because I
that's probably it.
I may have watched either they were talking about it in passing or there was a full review and I just like turned it off because I was like, what the fuck is this? But I mean, like, if it's that kind of oddball, I might watch it just for fun, like because I have enough free time that I can justify doing that for one afternoon or while
It
I'm
is
at
for
work.
sure a fun movie. It's worth it for the fun factor alone. I well, it's available on Prime for 99 cents. The guy who wrote it actually sent me directly. It's funny. He could have just told me, "Hey, just go to Prime. It's 99 cents." I would have paid it.
Hmm.
He sent me like the direct link with the password and everything on Vimeo, and we watched it. I was like, okay. Like I felt
Wow,
cool until I saw it was on Amazon for 99 cents.
that's cool.
Now I'm like, man, I'm not fucking cool. You save me $1, sure,
Look,
but
look
I
at
would have paid the
you,
dollar.
look at you having directors sending you shit for a
I
really
know, right?
basic ass movie, but still, it's more than anything I've ever gotten. But
his,
no,
his other movies on Tubi.
oh, okay, yeah, I might check. I'm like,
It's Surrogator, Surrogators, I think.
oh, okay, I'm kind of on board. I will tell you, like, just a couple more things before we call it a night here, because it is getting late. One movie that fucked me up as a kid that was kind of a horror esque movie that was definitely low budget was I think it was just called Slugs.
Hmm.
And that
Yeah.
movie fucked me up because one of the earlier scenes in the movie is like somebody in a bathtub and then like they come up through the fucking pipes and they just like eat the fucking person in the fucking tub, and I remember it just being like a remotely fleshy fucking skeleton. And then I saw that when I was like 4. I probably should not have seen that, but yeah.
You definitely should not.
No, that was random because I don't even know why that was on TV at all. I think I was just watching some random shit and like changed the channel and there it was. So I was like, I want to see what this is. Because I remember seeing some of the earlier scenes of The Blob, the first The Blob,
Hmm.
when I was a kid as
Yep.
well. And and the only thing I remember about that is there was a kind of a sex scene in a car. That was the part I remember mostly. And then they got eaten by the fucking blob. And I remember my uncle being all like, "Yeah, you see what he's doing there? Yeah." Like he's like sticking his hand in her shirt and shit. I was like, "Okay." And I'm like 4 or 5. Once again, probably shit I should not have seen as a kid. I wasn't allowed to watch horror movies or scary shit when I was a kid, so it took a while to get into that. But the what was the other thought I was having? Oh, a silly quote unquote horror movie that I recommend people watch because the premise is so fucking stupid is Rubber.
Yep. Uh,
You know what I'm
I don't
talking
know.
about.
I know of it. I don't think I've seen it though, but I am well aware of it.
I've seen at least half of it on a Sunday afternoon. I'm
Hey,
like, is this real? It's like, what am I
hey,
watching?
if you want, let's do an episode on it.
Oh, I guess we can. I mean, we could do that. We'll just
Like,
do more podcast. More podcast. That's the name of the game,
look,
right?
look, man. I be recording. Was it last week? I think I recorded like every night for like 5 straight nights this week. Like this is the start of another run.
Yeah.
It's like Jesus
And,
Christ,
and
dude. And like the fucked up thing about it, it's like because the lady from Australia said to me, she was like as much as you do a podcast and you get paid for it. I was like,
no.
girl, ain't nobody paying me for this. I don't even listen back to half of them. When I do Columpton, I don't listen back to them. So I don't even know what the fuck I be saying in most of those episodes. Like I be drunk or high and I just like I'll get like a text from someone who's like, dude, that was funny what you said. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
but I'll take your word for it because,
Yeah. By the time you get to the questions at the
Columpton.
end is funny. Um, yeah, the questions are hilarious. I need to write in to Colompton one day. That'd be fun.
Yes, shoot some questions because Steve's girlfriend doing the questions sometimes gets questioned because there's a language barrier for sure. So she'll ask a question. It's like I don't think those words go in that order, dude. Like like you can't even translate your own girlfriend. Like we should not have her doing the questions right now.
That's fucking funny. That's actually really fucking funny. Speaking of questions, guys, if you have any for our show here at Now You Made It Awkward, you can write into NowYouMadeItAwkwardMail@gmail.com because I had to have a longer email address than Nerd Rage. That was my goal. It's like I got to have a longer email address than Nerd Rage. We haven't got to write in a while. We do have occasional comments. Things slowed down there for a little while. We had a couple regulars that were always writing in, and then they kind of disappeared there for a little bit. But either way, also do the like and subscribe thing, both to this channel, and then, of course, go check out Dante's stuff over there at Off the Mats. So You Like Horror, and, of course, my favorite, Columpton Beer Club, which I will be sending you guys some stuff. I'm still gathering beers because, like, I figured out that some of the beers I bought on the road, when I was up there, we do have down here. So I was like, well, now I feel stupid. I could have not driven halfway across the country with some of these beers. Oh, and I forgot to remind you. Well, I might have reminded you last week when we talked about the beers I let you try at the party. The one that tastes like Baja Blast and then the cotton candy one. So I had another one of those the other day, and I was like, I drank a whole one of these like twice, and then I'm like, yeah, I did. Like, but by the time I'm like halfway through the can, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's like I get it. I'm a whore for the Mountain Dew stuff. Which I'm out of my alcoholic Mountain Dew now, so I don't know how I need to fix. I was drinking like one can of that a day instead of regular Mountain Dew. It's like I just need my little 5% alcohol kick. It's all good with some caffeine.
Five is okay. 5% is okay. It jumpstarts the day.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically what I was doing. Get home from work while I'm just bullshitting around the house. I drink one of those, or I pull out an IPA or something, or I just drank a bunch of tequila while we were sitting here talking. I don't even feel it, so that's good.
It's like I took my second NyQuil, so we'll see how that works out while I'm fucking with So You Like Horror in a minute.
I'm sure it'll end well for you. I actually got to go throw on my fucking CPAP and go to fucking sleep. Of course, go check out all the other shit we normally do. There's all the links down below, guys. It's fine. And, of course, I want to thank Dante for coming over here and basically continuing our other episode. It's just really what it is. This is a sequel. I'm actually going to call this Now You're Off the Mats. So it's a continuation of that episode, really. So, it is what it is. So if you depending on which way you listen to this, it's like either this one's going to be first or that one's going to be first. Either way, go back and forth because we had a lot of fun talking on that other one. I know we got really kind of like super nerdy on this one with time travel stuff. And I guess if you've listened this far, tell us your favorite time travel theories or concepts or movies or whatever in the comments, because that's always fun. Because some people are hardcore, like Back to the Future people, and you have Whovians that believe that everything's timey-wimey. Which is fine. I'm down for that too. So either way, guys, we will we will catch y'all on the next episode. And since you're new here, Dante, I'll tell you, we end it with just a K bye. So we do a pause and then we just say K bye. So, and with that,
K bye.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats.